8:20, we know it's against the law and dangerous to drive while holding a mobile phone. Do you think it's safe, though, to use a hands-free device while you're at the wheel?
New research has found that they could seriously affect our ability to focus on driving, and now the road safety charity Break is calling for them to be banned. Sharon Barber reports.
Driving while using a handheld mobile phone has been illegal in the UK for a decade now. But it isn't against the law to drive while talking hands-free. Researchers, though, have now discovered that using our phones hands-free can significantly reduce our ability to drive safely. Well, I've come down to Newcastle University to find out exactly what they've discovered in their research. What they've done is given me this strap. That's going to go underneath and it's going to monitor my heart rate and breathing. They've also given me a set of goggles with two small cameras, and that's going to monitor my eye movements and see what I'm looking at on the road. While at the wheel, the researchers called me. I answered handheld and hands-free. They asked increasingly complex questions while recording my heart rate, breathing and driving ability. Overall, their tests showed drivers taking calls on a hands-free phone saw their ability to maintain speed and their steering performance decline 37%.
We can see when people start talking on the phone, they didn't even recognize the hazard they've been through, and they didn't even, stop for stop line and miss the red traffic light. And even on the hands-free, if they are into this, conversation which demand a lot of thinking into it, they can be incredibly distracted.
So we're looking at the point where you start answering the phone.
We're all getting busier and multitasking more, and mobile phones mean we can be contacted anywhere at any time. But beware, say the scientists, as their evidence shows that talking to someone on the phone hands-free is more dangerous than talking to a passenger.
When you're talking to a passenger, they're context aware. They know what's happening on the road, and they may be quiet when they see you doing a difficult manoeuvre, or they may change if they recognise there's danger on the road. But when you're talking to someone remotely at the end of a phone who doesn't know what the driving conditions are that you're under at the time, they'll just continue that station, and you'll try and maintain it even though you're getting more dangerous at finding less concentration.
The research coincides with the start of National Road Safety Week, and the charity Break is now calling for the use of hands-free phones to be banned in cars. Sharon Barber, BBC News, Newcastle.
Well, Professor Phil Blythe, who you saw in that report, is a transport specialist at Newcastle University. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
This sort of backs up previous work from the Transport Research Laboratory, which found that people talking on hands-free phones and talking on the phone, their reactions are slower than people who are slightly over the drink drive limit.
They are, and also they seem to miss things on the road, like road signs, sometimes miss the red lights, etc., because they're concentrating on trying to speak to someone at the end of the phone who's not aware of the context of how they're driving at that point in time.
And we saw from what Sharon was doing that it can be, really badly affected her. For example, in the simulator, didn't it?
It did, yeah. And you could see that when she was speaking, trying to answer sort of maths questions on the phone, her driving was very poor. She couldn't keep in lane properly.
Does it depend on the type of conversation you're having as well?
I think it does. If it's a very casual conversation, then maybe it's not quite so difficult. But if you're trying to make decisions, or if it's a more in-depth conversation, and obviously the person speaking to you at the end of the phone is not aware of your driving situation, whether it's an easy driving situation or rather a more complex one. And people do seem to have difficulty. We're finding probably 3/4 of them drove less well when speaking on a hands-free mobile.
The hands-free technology is built into many cars these days. Is it realistic to suggest banning it?
I don't think so, because we use it a lot. We use it on our way to work. Obviously, we spend a lot of time in congestion where we want it to still be productive. But if people could be aware of the fact that they probably aren't driving as safe, and maybe limit their use a little more, or at least make sure they do it in situations where they're less likely to be affected by speaking while driving. And it's
what
mainly
sort of situations would that be where you're less likely to be affected?
It seems on motorways where you're driving on a simple road where you're not having to make any decisions about turning off or dealing with traffic. It's easier. When you're on urban roads, you're navigating, you've got lots of traffic congestion around, you've got to make lots of decisions, lots of road signs. That seems to be where the difficulties occur more.
Your findings, what does it say to you that people are endangering both their lives and other people's lives by doing this?
I think in some cases that is true, yeah. We saw there's a wide range of different reactions to answering the phone. Some people are perfectly fine, others clearly it does affect their driving quite significantly.
But hands-free technology versus squabbling kids in the back, which is more distracting?
That's a difficult one to judge. It depends on the context and how people can process lots of information at the same time. Some people report that having kids in the back making noise is really, really significant. I know that myself, yeah.
And it is quite a significant difference between talking on a hands-free phone or whatever it is and having talking to a passenger as well.
Yeah, because if you've got a passenger next to you, they can see the road in front of you, and they can temper their conversation based on how complex the driving is. If you've got someone at the end of a phone talking to you, they're not aware of the driving situation you're in, so they won't change their conversation based on maybe you've got a very difficult manoeuvre to make, and that's where the real issue comes, I think.
It's a useful warning to us all that if you are talking hands-free, you've really got to focus on the driving.
Yeah.
Okay. Phil, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Coming up, the BBC News.
Traffic, bad weather and simply finding our way around. They're some of the problems we face when we get behind the wheel. And whether we like it or not, they can become more difficult to cope with as we get older.
Well, now researchers at Newcastle University have begun finding out how older motorists deal with these challenges and how to keep us driving longer. Helen Ford reports.
Tina Fry has been driving for more than 40 years. She's confident behind the wheel, but knows that could change as she gets older. Tina is taking part in the Newcastle University research by using a sat-nav for the first time.
My husband and I have just recently done a long drive to somewhere unfamiliar. We didn't have to worry about which lane you got into. If there's a choice of 5 lanes, then it told you which of the lanes to get into. It gave you plenty of time, the warning a mile out, and then a reminder at the last minute, very important, which is the sort of thing that my co-driver sometimes forgets.
In the laboratory, Ian Fairclough is using a driving simulator. Faced with traffic and thick fog, the researchers are measuring his reactions.
We can glean whether he's driving correctly, whether he's actually monitoring his mirrors, and whether he's actually looking correctly where he's going. We can then figure out whether there is a way to reduce the stress on him to help him drive more comfortably, which is obviously going to make your driving better.
From worries over driving at night to tackling unfamiliar routes, the researchers say they now have a clear picture of what's concerning older drivers. The next stage is to come up with the technology to deal with those issues. The first idea is a sat-nav designed with older people in mind. It would pick the safest routes and avoid busy dual carriageways. The researchers accept not everyone can drive well into older age, but they say it can be a key part of staying healthy.
There's a lot of evidence that shows that when people do give up driving, a proportion of those become quite unwell and depressed quite soon after that because they have to do things so differently to before.
Tina Fry hopes to be driving for many more years. With her sat-nav and the possibility of other new technology, that dream is even more likely. Helen Ford in Newcastle.
Now, as we get older, our senses such as sight and hearing can diminish, and that leads to many people giving up driving. But being less mobile can leave some people feeling more isolated and lonely. Now, new technology is being developed by Newcastle University to help older drivers stay on the road longer. Sharon Barber is at the university and she can tell us more. Sharon.
Hello, Colin. You know, there's an increasing number of elderly drivers on the roads. The number of over 80s driving now is over 1 million, and there's even a 106-year-old driving out there on the road somewhere. Well, Phil Blythe, Professor Blythe, has been working on technology to make driving safer for longer for these elderly drivers. What have you discovered in your research so far?
We've discovered most older drivers are safe but could use a little bit of help to keep them driving for longer. So we've been looking at a range of technologies that could help them stay on on the road longer and deal with some of the issues that they have with driving when they're older.
So you've been putting them through all sorts of tests and fancy kit to monitor their eyes, their heart rate, their concentration, and hoping to develop technology in cars to make them better for elderly drivers.
That's right. We spent a year understanding older drivers' issues with driving and looking at technologies like new sat-navs, which are fit for purpose for older people, radar systems, head-up displays, and a whole raft of technologies that we could bring in to help with driving safer.
Tina Fry, you love driving. Why is it so important to be able to stay on the roads for longer?
It's really important as you get older still to be able to make contact with your neighbours, your friends, go out and have a social life, not get stuck in the house all the time. It's very important as you get older.
So what's it like if you lose your confidence when you're on the road? Well, I'm going to meet Ian now, Ian Fairclough. Ian, you don't really like driving anymore. You're having a practice here on the simulator, but why don't you like driving?
Too many vehicles on the road. I don't like driving at night in bad weather. Pedestrians that don't obey the rules, the weather congestion, the clutter on the roads, the number of road signs is very confusing, and it's difficult with parked cars to find out where you want to go, how you want to go, and stuff like that.
Okay, Ian, well, thank you very much. Hopefully this technology will benefit drivers like Ian. Back to you, Colin.
Sharon, thank you. A Teesside company and world leader in specialised business technology has won the Queen's Award for Internet.
Attacked last September. The journalism student admitted she'd lied 20 days after making the claim. Now, a Carlisle pensioner has passed her driving test nearly 60 years after her first lesson. Valerie Christie, who's 74 now, said she'd never found the right instructor until now. Valerie may be interested in some new technology under development at Newcastle University. Many older people give up driving, but this can leave some feeling isolated and lonely. This new technology aims to keep them on the road for longer. Sharon Barber reports.
There's now around 1 million drivers on our roads who are over 80. Many older drivers, though, have to give up for health reasons or a lack of confidence. But that can make them feel isolated and inactive.
Driving's not much fun, especially in the rush hour. If you drive down somewhere like the A1 and you're trundling along at about 45, 50 miles an hour, there's a big Arctic comes up behind you and he wants to pass you. The pressure builds up a little bit then.
So now researchers in Newcastle are developing new driving systems to help them.
A lot of people, when they do give up, it really affects their well-being. They've lost mobility, they've lost a lot of their social networks, and it does affect them very, very badly.
They've turned this car into a mobile laboratory, and using eye trackers and biomonitors can measure eye movement, concentration and stress levels.
The drivers are then brought in here to be tested on this simulator, and the scientists can program in almost any driving scenario. Maybe not that one.
The scientists say older drivers have particular needs. Some can't turn right at all, and so make all their journeys only turning left.
Judging distance in front, so maybe things like radar could help them to tell them what is a safe distance to follow a vehicle, and also what distance oncoming vehicles are away, so they can make right turns.
With the oldest driver on our roads, aged 106, the researchers are also working on a sat-nav nicknamed a granny nav. They hope the systems they develop will keep us all a little safer. Sharon Barber, BBC Look North.
I'm going to avoid Sharon in the car park tonight, I can tell you that, right? You're watching Look North, still to come.
Oh, I've taken the knob off.
Problems experienced by elderly drivers, often made worse by stress or anxiety. But could there be a remedy? Researchers at Newcastle University have developed a mobile laboratory. They're testing older drivers and developing technology to help keep them on the road for longer. Behind me is the test lab that they've developed to do this. Do you want to tell me a little bit about what you've been doing here?
Sure, we're investigating how we can keep older drivers on the road for longer, driving safely, because as you get older, people become more nervous about driving, they're concerned about driving on fast roads.
And obviously I'm dressed up in all this kit. How's this going to help you test my reactions and
things?
Okay, well, we'll be measuring where you're looking. So, are you looking outside the car, safely driving, or are you looking at the instrumentation? What else are you looking at? We'll measure your blood pressure, your stress levels as well, to see whether you come on any stressful situations like in congestion or trying to make a decision when to turn left or right.
All kitted out, it's time for a drive in the mobile laboratory.
Okay, shall we start the car?
The DriveLab is an electric car fitted out with monitors. The results are fed back and analysed so new technology can be developed to make driving easier.
From the breathing rate and the heart rate, you can extract stress values, and so you can understand what sort of stress is placed on the driver at certain points. So we're hoping to be able to build technologies to reduce this stress. If you reduce the stress, then it helps people drive easier.
These will include gadgets to improve night vision, control speed and make navigation easier.
It's really important because it's your independence. You've really got to feel you want to be independent as you get older. You don't want to be relying on people all the time. I think it's really good and very necessary. I think older drivers need some help nowadays. Oh, I went through it. I went through a car.